I remember the day it all came crashing down, when everything I had worked for, everything I had built, seemed to slip through my fingers. It wasn't the money, it wasn't the fame, it wasn't even the pride. It was something much deeper. It was the realization that my own family, the people I trusted the most, didn't truly understand me or what I had done. It was a shock. I had just sold my business for $2.9 billion. dollars. The numbers were staggering. But even then, it wasn't enough to bridge the gap that had silently formed between us over the years. I had given them everything, my time, my heart, and all the pieces of my success. But in the end, they fired me. Why? Because they didn't know the one thing that truly mattered, the one thing I had kept to myself, the code. Growing up, my parents were always my heroes. They worked tirelessly to provide for us, even when things weren't easy. I was the youngest of four, and my father had this way of making us feel like nothing was impossible. My mother, though quiet, always had this unspoken strength. She didn't say much, but her actions spoke louder than words ever could. I admired them, and I wanted to make them proud. It was never about the money for me. It was about proving to them that their sacrifices were worth something. I saw the way their eyes lit up when I told them I was starting my own business. They didn't fully understand what it would take, but they supported me. And when things got tough, when I was on the verge of quitting, I always thought of them. They were my motivation. I spent sleepless nights, worked weekends, and sacrificed time with friends and family. I wanted to build something, something that would ensure they never had to struggle again. I imagined a future where they could relax, where they could enjoy the fruits of their labor. And when my company started to grow, when it finally became something real, I thought, this is it. I did it. But what I didn't see was the subtle shift in the air, the distance growing between us, the unspoken tensions that were there, but I couldn't quite grasp. I had become so wrapped up in the business, I never noticed how much they were changing too. As my business grew, so did the expectations. I started to realize that my parents, though proud of me, were still holding on to an old vision. They couldn't quite grasp the world I was navigating. To them, success was about traditional values, hard work, stability, and a steady income. They saw the money, the office, and the people, and they thought, this is what success looks like. But they didn't see what it really took to make it all work. They didn't see the sleepless nights, the risk, and the code I had built everything on. I remember the day I told them about the deal. I had just signed the papers to sell my business for $2.9 billion. dollars. I was excited, but there was a strange hesitation in their reactions. My father gave me a firm handshake, his eyes proud but distant. My mother simply nodded, her lips tight. "It's a good deal," she said, but there was no warmth in her voice. The pride I had hoped to see wasn't there. Instead, there was an unspoken confusion. They didn't understand the value of what I had built. They didn't see the work that went into creating something from nothing. It was just a business transaction to them, a number on paper. They didn't understand that the code, those unseen, intangible work, was what made everything possible. And that's when I realized they didn't fully understand me or what I had created. As the months passed after the sale, I began to feel an unsettling tension within my family. It wasn't just the usual post-deal excitement or the awkward adjustment to the sudden wealth. It was something deeper, something unsaid. I remember sitting at the dinner table one evening, trying to share the thrill of what we could do now, buy a new house, travel, take vacations, all of us, together. But as I spoke, my parents exchanged glances. It was subtle, but I saw it. My father cleared his throat, and my mother set down her glass of water a little too firmly. "Where do we go from here?" my father asked, his voice neutral. "What's next?" The question lingered in the air, unanswered. I looked at him, trying to gauge if he was proud or resentful, but his expression was hard to read. "Well, I thought we'd take some time to relax," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Maybe go to the beach, do something we never had time for before." But even as I said it, I realized something that had been nagging at the back of my mind for a while. My parents didn't understand the life I had just stepped into. They didn't understand that the code, the intellectual property that had powered my company, was what made everything possible. It wasn't just a business deal, it was the foundation of everything. But I couldn't bring myself to explain it to them. It felt like I was trying to justify my success in a way that didn't feel right. I began to notice my parents becoming more distant. They didn't understand the tech world, the digital landscape that I had immersed myself in. They were stuck in the past, in a world where business was tangible, something you could touch. They couldn't wrap their minds around the invisible nature of the work I had done, the code that had grown into something worth billions. And without realizing it, they were pushing me away. The distance grew, and it wasn't just in the way my parents interacted with me. It started to reflect in their words, their decisions. My father began making offhand comments, often about real work or the way things used to be done. He didn't outright criticize me, but the implication was there. My mother, on the other hand, remained quiet, but I could feel the shift. Her once supportive gestures, like the little things she'd do to make me feel cared for, started to fade. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt rejected. It wasn't long before I started questioning myself. Was I doing enough to make them proud? Had I become too focused on the business, the company, and the success? My mind kept circling back to the fact that I had built this empire, but it was all based on something intangible, the code, that invisible engine that had made everything possible. But to my parents, the code didn't exist. They couldn't see it, touch it, understand it, and that made them feel like my success wasn't real. I remember a conversation with my sister. She had always been close to me, but even she had started to pull away. "You're so different now," she said one evening, her tone filled with a sadness I hadn't expected. "You're not the same person you used to be." "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. She shrugged. "You've changed, that's all. You don't talk about anything except business. And now, with all this money, I don't know, it's like you're not part of this family anymore." Her words stung, though I tried not to show it. I hadn't realized that in my quest to succeed, I had alienated the people who mattered the most to me. My family, the ones who had supported me in the beginning, now felt distant. The more I tried to explain my work and my passion for the code, the more I felt misunderstood. The turning point came unexpectedly. One evening when my parents asked me to meet them, they had insisted it was important, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had been trying to convince myself that it was just my imagination. Maybe they were just struggling to adjust, like me. But when I walked into the living room, their faces told me everything. "Sit down, son," my father said, his voice unusually stern. I sat across from them, heart racing. My mother looked at me, her expression unreadable, and that silence, it was deafening. "We need to talk," my father began. "We've been going over things, and we've made a decision." My stomach dropped. I could already feel where this was heading. "What decision?" I asked, trying to stay calm. He looked at my mother, and she finally spoke up. "We're letting you go from the company." "I mean, I'm the one who built it. I'm the one who made this happen." "It's not about the company," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's about what you've become. We don't recognize you anymore. You've sold yourself out. You've sold out everything we stood for." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had built this company for them. I had worked day and night, sacrificed so much, all to make sure they didn't have to work anymore, that they could live comfortably. But somehow, in their eyes, I had failed. I had become a stranger. They didn't realize the code was my creation, my blood, my sweat. They didn't understand how it all connected, how every line of code was part of me. And now, after everything I had done for them, they were pushing me out. They didn't see me for who I really was. They just saw the money, the business, and the numbers. I was in shock. I just sat there, staring at my parents, unable to fully comprehend what they were saying. The room felt suffocating, as though the walls were closing in on me. "You don't understand," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I built everything. Every single part of it was my doing, my ideas, my code. You think I just sold a business? This was my life's work. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't making a difference. They were resolute. They didn't understand the significance of the code, the foundation of everything that had made the company successful. To them, it was just a deal, a transaction on paper. They saw me as a son, someone who had gone too far, someone who had changed in a way they couldn't accept. I didn't ask for this, I said, standing up. I didn't ask for everything to change, but I did it for you. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I could feel my voice shaking now. The frustration, the hurt, the betrayal. It was all bubbling up inside me, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. I did all of this for us, I repeated, but my words were empty now. They didn't seem to register with them. We know, my father said quietly, but you don't see it, do you? You've lost yourself in the process, and we've lost you. The words stung, but they didn't hit me right away. It wasn't until much later that I fully understood what they had meant. In their eyes, my obsession with the company and the code had taken me too far from the person I once was, the son they had known, the brother, the person who valued family above all else. But the truth was, I didn't know how to separate the two. The company and I had become one. It was all I had. All I was. Without it, who was I? As I walked out of the room, my mind raced. It felt like I had been punched in the gut and I didn't know how to breathe. I thought about all the late nights, the endless sacrifices, and the months spent building something I could finally be proud of. And now, in one moment, it had all been reduced to nothing more than a business deal. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything my parents had said. It wasn't just their decision that hurt. It was the realization that they didn't understand me. They didn't understand the fire that had driven me, the passion I had for the work. It wasn't about the money, the fame, or even the success. It was about building something that mattered, something I could call my own. I kept coming back to the code, the lines I had written, the systems I had developed. It wasn't just an idea on paper. It was the very heart of the business, the thing that had made it all possible. But to my parents, it didn't exist. They couldn't see it. And because of that, they couldn't see me. I sat in front of my computer the next day, staring at the lines of code I had spent years perfecting. It was my creation, my legacy. But even as I looked at it, a part of me felt hollow. They had made me feel like what I had built didn't matter, like I was somehow less than who I used to be. I couldn't escape the feeling of being lost, like I was caught between two worlds, one where my parents were proud of me, and one where they didn't even understand me. The weight of it all was crushing. But in that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized that maybe it wasn't them I needed to prove anything to. Maybe it was myself. I decided to leave the house that day, taking a long walk to clear my mind. The cool air hit my face, but it couldn't numb the emotions swirling inside me. I kept thinking about what my parents had said, how they thought I'd lost myself, how they couldn't see what I had built. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about feeling misunderstood and unappreciated. It was about knowing that I had worked tirelessly to give them everything I could. But in the end, it still wasn't enough. But then, as I walked, I started to think about something else. Maybe they were right. Maybe I had lost sight of who I was. Maybe I had become so consumed by the business, by the code, that I had forgotten the very people who had helped me get here. I thought about my childhood, those quiet moments when my parents had sat with me, offering love and guidance. I had been so focused on my achievements, so eager to prove myself, that I had taken them for granted. As I stood there, looking out at the city below, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The tension, the hurt, the anger, They were still there, but they didn't feel as heavy. I realized something important, that no amount of money or success could replace what I had lost with my family. I took a deep breath and made a decision. It wasn't about the code or the business or even the money. It was about reconnecting with the people who had always been there for me. It wasn't too late to find my way back, to rebuild what had been broken. And maybe, just maybe, my parents would see me for who I really was, not just as the person who sold a business, but as their son. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I reached out to my parents. I'd been so wrapped up in my own world, in the business and the deal, that I had let the relationship with them fall to the wayside. But that morning, I realized how much I needed them and how much I missed the bond we once had. I called my father first, unsure of what I would say. He answered on the third ring. His voice was steady, but distant, as if he wasn't sure where this conversation was going either. "Dad," I said softly, "can we talk?" There was a pause on the other end. "Of course," he replied. "Where do you want to meet?" I asked if we could sit at the house. It felt right to go back to the place where everything had started. When I arrived, I could see the cautiousness in his eyes. He was waiting for an explanation, but I wasn't sure where to begin. I took a deep breath, then began. "I'm sorry. I think I've lost sight of what really matters. The business, the success, it all became so big, so consuming, that I forgot why I started. I wanted to take care of you and Mom, but in doing that, I've pushed you both away. I've been so focused on proving something that I forgot what was truly important." My father sat there, silent, but his eyes softened. For the first time in a long while, I saw a glimpse of the man who had raised me. The tension that had been lingering between us began to fade slowly. "I don't know what I've become, Dad, but I want to make things right. I want to be your son again, not just the guy who made a deal." My father didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, as if weighing my words. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I know you've been through a lot. We all have. But you've got to understand, son, it wasn't just about the business for us. It wasn't about the money. It was about you, about the person you used to be, the one who used to care about the little things, the one who would sit and talk to us and laugh with us. I've missed that." Hearing those words from him broke something inside me. I realized then just how much I had changed, how much I had let the success and the business consume me. The man who had once been so focused on family, who cared so deeply for the people around him, had slowly disappeared under the weight of ambition and self-validation. "I don't want to lose that person," my father continued, his voice soft but firm. "I don't want to lose you either." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "I don't want to lose you either. I've been so focused on trying to make something of myself that I forgot what made me who I am in the first place, this family. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner." We sat in silence for a moment, just absorbing the weight of everything that had been said. It felt like the beginning of something new. Maybe I couldn't undo all the hurt I had caused, but I could start fresh and take it one step at a time. "Let's work on this together," I said quietly, looking him in the eye. "We'll figure it out." He smiled faintly, the tension between us finally beginning to ease. "We'll get there, son, one step at a time." Over the next few weeks, I began to rebuild the connections that had been strained. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I made a conscious effort every day. I spent more time with my parents, listening to their stories, sharing my experiences, and trying to understand what had gone wrong. Slowly, the walls that had grown between us began to crumble, piece by piece. One evening, we sat down as a family for dinner, just like old times. My mother asked about the business, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't talk about the numbers or the deal. I told her about the journey, about the challenges and the moments of doubt. I shared the parts of the story that had never